Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, again, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for taking some time out to join us today. My name's John Tobin. I am a solution architect with Trilio, and along with my colleague Kevin Jackson, we'll be doing a series of talks over the next few weeks. But thanks for taking the time out to join us. We hope this time is useful. We're going to kind of keep things easy and light over the course of these chats. So we hope you enjoy the topics. We're going to be doing things in kind of a lightning talk format. So these will be, relatively quick, 30-minute talks about several different topics in data protection, really. We're going to do our best to kind of stick to the time frame here. Like I said, keep it light. So if you have any questions, please post them. You can send them directly to me in the chat box because I'll be moderating today while Kevin's talking. With that, I'd like to introduce you all to the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Jackson. Take it away, Kev.
Thank you, John. I hope everybody is okay today, and I'm just going to double check the fact that I'm not on mute. No, all is good, all is good. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, this morning, wherever you are around the world. It's the first of many sessions where John and I will be having chats with you guys and girls around data protection. The first of our topics is going to be on why do I need backup and recovery for OpenStack and Red Hat virtualization. So if you don't run those technologies, or you're expecting some kind of fashion shoot or something, obviously you're in the wrong room. But if it's about OpenStack and Reve, then absolutely you're in the right place today. Right, let me just move on. So the agenda today, a little introduction into how we're going to run things. I'm going to run through the various challenges with out-of-the-box OpenStack, how it grew up and how we ended up where we are, and why the need for data protection exists in that cloud world. And we're bringing in Reve as well. We have a great product that integrates into Reve, and so I want to bring all this into the same topic. I'll be as quick as I can. I love OpenStack. Hopefully John will keep me kind of to time. I can probably reminisce a little bit too much about the OpenStack side of things. So if I see people shouting, I'll move on. But other than that, we'll get through the agenda. And honestly, look, send your questions our way. So like John said, we're going to run this every couple of weeks. We want interaction. Obviously, we can't have a lot of voices all challenging us all at once. So use the chat feature. Go and tell John, your concerns, your challenges, and we'll come on at the end to answer some of those questions where we can. Of course, don't be too challenging. Look, I've had a great week this week. Don't make it too hard. But yeah, we'll see what we do there. But look, the best person to come out with the most engaging questions, we'll win an Amazon gift card. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled, and we'll go through now. So just a little background on me. As you can tell, I like to talk a little bit too much. Now for a lightning talk, that's probably a curse. But my background is a lot of OpenStack. In fact, 10 years of the stuff. Now, if you look at these two photographs, one's in black and white, and look, if you look at my one, I'm also black and white too. Look, that's gray hair of OpenStack at work here. But I operate out of the EMEA region, and John, you heard talking then, he'll be doing other talks later on in the series. He's my peer that I look up to, a lot in ways, but he's also taller than me. But in a lot of areas, John is superb, and he'll be doing some further talks later on through this year. So let's go through this. So where do we begin? So the reason why I'm going through this, I think it's important to understand the evolution of where we are today in IT and the challenges that we face. So starting off in the world of bare metal, look, who misses the old days, right? This is a world where somebody had an application, and you knew exactly where that application ran. It ran on one of those servers in that data center. It was a lot simpler back then. But with the advent of with the advent of hardware efficiencies and an increase in power and utilization, along came virtualization, and quite rightly so. But at this point, this is where the Reve journey comes in. And Reve obviously is fantastic at this area, but this is where the virtualization journey begins, in the fact that you have applications now that are running pretty much on something which looks and feels like real hardware. You're just getting the efficiencies through the hypervisor, but ultimately you're still having a lot of control over that application and where that application ran in your data center. You're just losing a little bit of sight, just a little bit at the edges, but ultimately, there's a lot of what you knew in the old way you can apply to the virtualization world. And then we get onto the cloud world. Now, the cloud world is an evolution, obviously, of virtualization. Cloud brings along with it APIs and orchestration. Now, obviously, in the very early days, people saw the cloud API and the orchestration piece as essentially doing somebody out of a job. Obviously, that's not the case. And we full well know in the year 2020, that is absolutely not the case. Those roles basically just moved to maintaining those APIs and those orchestration systems. But ultimately, what those cloud APIs and what that orchestration gave us was essentially IT losing sight of where things ran. Now, it's great from the other end of things, the people who are consuming the IT. So you've got the developers, the application owners. This cloud world is absolutely fantastic, but the IT department who had basically hold the SLAs and they hold the keys to the backup and the recovery, they start to lose sight of where things are running. And of course, this itself really brings up why we're having this conversation today. So let me go through the OpenStack side of things. Like I said, John, keep me honest and keep me to time. Look, I can speak. I could probably speak for 10 years on this this subject. So I'll try to make this as far as possible. But I absolutely love OpenStack. Anyway, out the box OpenStack. Out the box OpenStack allows you to do a number of great things. Look, it's a cloud platform for the enterprise. But out of the box, it allows you to do things which I guess tease you in the world of data protection. They give you features which sound like backup and protection, but ultimately, you've got a world where it just does not go far enough in a world of self-serve and the mantra of cloud. But what I want to do is just back up slightly, and I promise to keep this short on the OpenStack, but I do want to just go through a little bit of the history of OpenStack as to why and where we ended up with OpenStack. So obviously in the early days, it grew up in the shadows of the public cloud, literally Amazon it grew up in. And so the direction it was going to go in was that purely, that world of this application owner or this developer. They were developing at a fast pace on this cloud technology. But the problem is, I say there was a little bit of lack of control in terms of the data side of things. It was great to develop the web applications at scale, but there was a lot of talk around, I don't need to back up. I have orchestration. Now, of course, that's a silly sentiment, but that was kind of like the mantra. So that was like one angle of cloud, and that's of the popularity of the public cloud. But at the same time, you have the IT department, raising their hands going, but, and you've got a whole load of enterprise applications which say, okay, they're not a great fit for that public cloud world. So what happened with OpenStack was, whilst it was growing up in the direction of Amazon, it took a different turn. Not only did the fact that the Amazons of the world had to just concentrate on the Amazon features, the OpenStack world had to concentrate on every single vendor under the sun. Whether it's storage, network, even the hypervisors, had to play nicely across a whole gamut of technologies. That was one reason why we're in where we are today in the enterprise in private cloud. But the other piece is the fact that this world that OpenStack was going towards, it just never came to fruition. Whilst it started off as a public cloud, competitor from the rack space days, it just never got to that scale and size in terms of fast pace and development. So it became the de facto standard for for private clouds in the enterprise. And this is why, honestly, there's a point to my rambling. We have ended up in this place with OpenStack because we are a fit in the enterprise space with OpenStack. And of course, that brings with it a load of applications and a lot of infrastructure that requires data protection. So it's not just this world of the fast-paced applications, which could spawn off, 30, 40, 50 different instances, and you can scale out accordingly. Ultimately, we're seeing a lot of what we would say legacy. Obviously, it's not legacy anymore, but it's what those genuine workloads are operating today on large scales on OpenStack. So of course, we need to protect that. So let's have a look at the pros and cons of the out-the-box kind of stuff. So of course, with an out-the-box OpenStack, of course, you can do snapshots. It doesn't cost anything. Of course, it's going to take up storage. So, use the word cost, sparingly. But when you look at the downsides, there's just a lot of downsides. It gets you so far. So ultimately, snapshots obviously are not backups. I hope we all agree with that. Because snapshots live within the infrastructure, you need to have them shipped off somewhere else. That's why going back only, I don't know, halfway through the life of OpenStack, they introduced a backup feature for Cinder, which saw these snapshots then get shipped off to Swift, for example. But so you've got to think of that world. If you're doing snapshots today, and if you look at a lot of the conversations we have are people saying, "Oh, we developed some scripts." Absolutely brilliant, but they're all based on snapshots. They have to move. They have to go somewhere else. Obviously, we still have the agents in this world, and in a cloud world where you're trying to scale, look, agents just don't scale. But ultimately, what we're trying to do with OpenStack is like any other piece of IT. We want to have a backup of these instances, what all makes sense of the data that's being consumed. And of course, we want to store this outside of OpenStack. And when it's stored outside of OpenStack, you have a lot of flexibility. And some of those strategies you can then introduce to such as disaster recovery. And disaster recovery in OpenStack is a very complex beast without, some more mature backup software in place. Move on. Let's have a look at Reve. So I want to bring in Reve in the conversation as well. So Reve obviously is more of a single tenant domain suite of software. Obviously, it's fantastic in the enterprise virtualization space, but it's still, when it comes to data protection out the box, or certainly with added features, there's still some limitations in terms of the data protection strategies. So, of course, you can do your snapshots, but again, look, you're going to go asleep tonight and you're going to be, hearing snapshots are not backups. So, of course, snapshots are not backups. However, you can do exports of those snapshots if you want to out of Reve. But you know what? You have to do them offline, so it's disruptive. Again, in an enterprise world, you don't want to have this thing called downtime. I'm pretty sure that's a bad word. So again, you want to introduce features into your enterprise virtualization, which makes great sense in terms of your data protection. And I say out the box, there's just some challenges. So of course, snapshotting, I say again, no cost. It's going to take up storage space. So somebody has to foot the cost there. If you're using some kind of backup system, again, because of the way I see virtualization is bare metal plus plus, right? It's most people manage those virtual machines more or less as more of the pets of the world, and so they fit quite nicely into an enterprise-wide strategy. But the problem is you're then having to use different tools outside of your domain knowledge of, say, Red Hat virtualization. And I can go on and talk about the cons in terms of the fact that I say snapshots. Snapshots live inside the infrastructure you're protecting. Look, what happens if that storage fails and you want to recover the VM? Well, you need to have that storage domain up. So again, you're not really protecting anything. So you've got to look at your fault domains. But the key thing, and we see a lot of this in the Rev world, it's agents really do seem to, unfortunately, rule in the backup world of Rev. And it's not a great strategy, especially as the conversations we're having as people scale in Rev and they want to move out to that world. Look, again, agents are not great. So let's move on. So why do we need a cloud backup strategy? Look, as if I haven't, tried to explain enough, but ultimately what we're trying to do is protect the business. So I've got a lot of stuff in here. Look, we're trying to protect the data. We're trying to protect the applications. You want to be able to recover in a timely manner wherever you need to, but ultimately you are responsible for backups in order for your business to continue running. You're not doing it just to appease, I don't know, a NetApp contract and use up all the, the storage that they've given. Look, at the end of the day, this is genuine. You need to have a valid backup strategy as part of your infrastructure. Now, one of the other interesting things about cloud, obviously, we've talked about virtualization and that movement into cloud. People are still doing it. It's completely valid. It's a genuine, ongoing task for a lot of IT departments. But as they find, certainly the large places, as we find that they are moving away from the traditional backup strategies in terms of the incumbent type of backup services, they realize that they have shortcomings in terms of how that scales in a true cloud kind of world. And so one of the things, and certainly, one of the nice things I can certainly talk about from the Trilio side of things, is the fact that we have this consistency across the portfolios from a virtualization world into a cloud world, and then onto your cloud native world, which I reckon is going to be a future topic on Kubernetes as part of this particular series. But ultimately, if you think of how we do things at Trilio, and why we do things in a certain way, it makes sense of how we can help you move your world from a virtualization strategy type world to a cloud backup strategy. And it all makes sense across all gamuts of your IT. So what is that different approach? So let's all agree that agents suck, right? So, I mean, managing them, whether you have virtual machines that do have them, don't have them, I don't know, they've got the wrong version, I don't know. But let's all agree that that's not the best way to proceed in the year 2020. Multi-cluster, multi-tenant. I'm going to group multi-cluster, tenant, and self-service all together. So again, we're talking cloud data protection. So even in the Rev world, even in the world of, you've got this Red Hat virtualization, which has certain features of snapshotting, you want to have a tool which is part of the product. Absolutely, you want to have something which isn't a third party. It's part of that technology. So integrating is absolutely critical. Now that becomes even further critical in the thought of, say, cloud space. Because again, my view, and I'm allowed to say my view because I'm the one talking, my view is in a cloud world, you want to get out the way as fast as possible. Backup, honestly, it's one of those words where everybody needs it. But it's one of those things of they don't want to interrupt their process. They don't want to interrupt the way of working, and they don't want to introduce certainly anything which will break their application. So again, having something which is seamlessly part of the cloud is absolutely crucial for a genuine cloud data protection strategy. Being able to scale. Again, if you look at this diagram, I kind of tie this with the agent kind of piece. When you have something which is part of the infrastructure, deployed as part of the infrastructure, so in an OpenStack world, where if you're very familiar with OpenStack, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people on this call are, it basically is a suite of web services that do a particular function and do that function well. We're basically the Trilio side of things is just the backup service for that particular genuine infrastructure when we're talking OpenStack. And so because we're part of the infrastructure, we scale exactly as you would scale any part of that infrastructure. And we don't have to manage about what the guests or the users are doing inside of their tenants, because we can protect them now. And that's really powerful. Again, we're not telling people, oh, here's a rule, your guests have to have version X, Y, and Z of something, say an agent in there, in order for a backup to be successful. It's just part of the infrastructure. Being non-disruptive, I think, is key as well. I mean, it's one of those things where I think people almost expect maybe a disruption to take place, but if you get them in a world where things are non-disruptive, you will see a different change in how people are consuming backups and how they're doing recovery. So in a cloud world, you know, in say an OpenStack world, where if people can find out that they can do non-disruptive backups like we can do it with Trilio, you will find the fact that they'll be using backups, maybe more. They'll be using backups in an interesting way. So rather than you know, having to you know, just use them in a world of, oh, I wasn't going to swear then, but you know, in a world of something's gone wrong and you need to pull back from your backup, look, you can self-serve and do this all seamlessly. And you'll find that the different approach will encourage a hell of a lot of better behavior and better utilization of your cloud. And the last thing, certainly from the Trilio side of things, you know, we store things in an open universal schema. You know, whichever technology we talk about, from Reve to OpenStack, and I say outside of the conversation, but teasing you, because I like to tease you, the Kubernetes world, we write out QCOW2 file, very, very flexible format. But it's one of those things where we're not tying you into anything. It works very well in the cloud paradigm. It's a very portable format. And so, you know, it allows us, again, great flexibility in how we integrate directly with the infrastructure. So I'll go quickly through the use cases. I've realized the time. So of course, backup and recovery, that's pretty obvious, right? You know, you need to be able to back up and recover your own workload. You own the data, it's your workloads. Disaster recovery is an interesting one. If you think about storing data outside, certainly in an environment which is complex as OpenStack, having something which is outside and being able to import into an alternative cloud is obviously a great conversation starter with your architects. This goes back to the application mobility, you know, in terms of if things are non-disruptive, there's an API to your backup service. You start to consume these services in a completely different light. In this case, you could be using a backup to facilitate a new CI/CD build, you know, maybe a staging environment from your production environment. And the last thing, migration. So being able to go from one cluster in Reve to another very easily. If you've not got a single domain, if you think of a DR sort of like strategy where there is a delineation between Reve DC1 and Reve DC2. But also in the OpenStack world, OpenStack honestly is genuinely complex when it comes to DR. Trilio does make that a little bit easy, a little bit too easy, you know, puts people out of a job, I think. And then we can facilitate upgrades. You know, if again, the world of the world of upgrades of OpenStack, I mean, it's vastly improved. But if Mike Gray Hair's got anything to say anything about, it's still got some way to go. But if you've got backups outside of an OpenStack environment, you can then use that as part of your upgrade strategy. And I'll be talking about that in a couple of weeks. So I talked a lot. I'm sorry. I like to talk. But has anybody got any questions? John, have you got any questions?
Yeah, we definitely have some some questions, Kev. I think we got a really good one from Kurt, which was just a general question about Trilio. I think he was wondering, you know, not knowing a lot about Trilio, and there's probably quite a few people with us today that don't know a lot about Trilio. We're kind of trying to keep things general today and not necessarily speaking a lot about us, but he was wondering, you know, is it a traditional quote unquote backup solution? Meaning, can he use it, you know, in a standalone agent basis, or, you know, inside of VMs outside of OpenStack and Reve?
So we very specifically integrate into those tools, so much so that, you know, if I did have time to show you a demonstration, if you are familiar with Reve and you've got the Reve manager, you will see us in there. If you're familiar with OpenStack and the Horizon dashboard, where you've got the Nova, well, you've got the compute, you've got your identity, you've got all those tabs, we become another tab in there. Again, it's not a third-party tool. It's not something you install in a generic context. The reason why you get the efficiencies is the fact that we are absolutely 100% part of that product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point, Kev. Yeah, and Kurt, for you and the rest of the audience, that the agent based market's fairly well covered, but I think as IT and as we're all getting more, quote unquote cloud native, as much as that is an overused term, the ability to be able to actually integrate right into the infrastructure is, it has its trade-offs, but the advantages of it are very easy self-service. So getting away from being the backup admin for your customers and giving them that single pane of glass makes the friction for adopting backups and the ease of use from their standpoint, it makes it so much greater. And Kev already talked about it. That's what everything's about, right? It's making it easy for your quote unquote customers, whether they be internal or external to your organization, making it easier for them to be able to adopt backups and making it easier for you to manage as well. And not only that, reducing the footprint, basically the resource footprint of your backup infrastructure. Because every time you install an agent, you have to dedicate CPU and memory to that. And when you can do things in an integrated manner, part of your platform, it makes it much easier and brings down the footprint so that you can do things like non-disruptive backups now. And the cost of doing those backups decreases so you can do more backups as well. It's a win-win. It doesn't make the use case as broad, meaning you can't roll it out across your entire infrastructure, but I think most companies are going to consolidating their infrastructure, at least to a virtualization platform like Reve, or to a more multi-tenant cloud platform like OpenStack. So, yeah.
Yep. Cool.
There's another one from Roy, and I recognize Roy. We've worked quite a bit together in the past. Roy's really asking about our ability to integrate with things like SQL databases.
Sure. So yeah, so databases is a very interesting backup topic because there's a lot of the domain of knowledge in a lot of departments remain with the backup administrators. So where we fit in terms of databases is we can run hook scripts as part of the backup jobs. So when we go in and we go and take a backup of, say, a database, we can perform a function against your database to take it into backup mode, for example. But bear in mind that we're going at the disk level. So for example, if you've got your database spread across multiple disks, which most people are, we're going to be taking a backup of those disks from our point of view. But at the same time, from the top end, there will be a call prior to our snapshot, which we then export. Just making that point clear that our snapshots are backups; they go offsite. That we do perform that function prior to taking that backup. But we augment the existing strategies of SQL backup. The Oracle administrators will have a great deal to say on those topics. But certainly from where we sit, we go in. We will perform the either any kind of quiescing or any kind of offlining of databases before we go and get those particular disks. And whether it's SQL Server on Microsoft platforms or whether it's Oracle on a Linux-based platform.
Yeah. Good stuff, Kev. I think there's a few more questions. I know some people probably have to drop off, and feel free to, if you need to, you can always follow up with either Kevin or I. I think there are customers wondering, Kev, if they're using things like storage native snapshots or clones and maybe shipping those off somewhere else, whether it's like a NetApp Open System Snap Vault or something like that. Like, what's the point of using a separate backup solution in that case?
Yeah. So obviously this always comes up. So there's a few angles to this. So I'm going to answer from the OpenStack side of things because this is where I see this a lot. So first and foremost, when we talk of NetApp snapshotting, using SnapVault, for example, that's obviously a Cinder function. don't forget, one of the things that we said that we're backing up as part of our cloud strategy is we're backing up the workload, that VM that served a purpose for that business. So snapshotting just a disk is a little bit, a little bit anonymous. It's kind of like, hey, look, there's some storage. I'm going to go behind the scenes. I've got a snapshot of this. What's the restore? The restore is not particularly pretty, in terms of getting that back into a usable state. And when I say a usable state, we're talking about the service. Again, in the cloud world, we're moving away from virtual machines, the pets of the world. There's a bit of more touch and feel maybe in that world. Although Trilio for Reve makes things, a lot easier in the fact that we put the pieces back together again for you. But in a cloud world, it's just not even thought of. But first and foremost, you're talking Cinder, so you're missing out on the VM snapshot itself. So you miss out that. Again, the snapshotting, it gets complicated when you start to ship that elsewhere. So Snap Vault, and then you put that as a Snap Mirror over to a remote data center. I've seen a lot of assumptions of what you can then do with that data. That it's a checkbox exercise to say, hey, my data's in my other data center, 200 miles away. But you come to recover that data into OpenStack, and that's not a pretty routine. Now, for the likes of NetApp, they're trying to make that a little bit easier. In fact, some of the other companies do try and make that a little bit easier these days. But when you ship over stuff from a unique cloud in data center one, that uniqueness has no meaning in the other data center. So whilst you have ticked the box of this data now is over in the other data center, it only makes sense if your DR strategy is to get that original one back online, and you've just got a copy of your data. So bear that in mind. The way we do stuff at Trilio is we write things out generically, so we're not beholden to specific vendors and how particularly you want to go down those particular routes. So we very specifically go and adhere to what you would expect to adhere to in an OpenStack friendly world, a cloud friendly world. We're using the APIs, so we've got a level of abstraction, and that gives great benefits, and it allows us to, again, our recoveries are around the fact that we're recovering the end goal. The end goal is that particular service. So we're capturing the IP address information, we're capturing the metadata, we're capturing a whole load of stuff that just does not live on that disk. It lives within the metadata, within that cloud layer. So you're missing a whole load of stuff if you're relying on just Snap Vault, for example.
Great answer, Kev. With that, I think, we're a little past the hour. I know Roy had another question. Roy, will follow up with you directly. And anyone else that has a question, Kev, if you want to advance to the next slide, You're more than welcome to reach out to Kevin or I directly. Those are our email addresses on the slide, just firstname.lastname@trilio.io. I also want to let you know that our next lightning talk is going to be coming up on May 28th. So please come and join us with that. And we'll have another 2 sessions after that as well. That'll be kind of building on all of these things that we're talking about. I want to say thank you for joining us today. We are going to award the raffle prize to Kurt Bendel, who I don't think is on the call any longer, but we'll be following up with him. If you do know Kurt, you can let him know we'll be reaching out. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Everyone, please stay safe during these odd times. And we hope that you'll join us in 2 weeks. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.